What It Takes, Lessons in the Pursuit of Excellence, by Stephen A. Schwarzman. Introduction. Imagine this. It's a dreary spring afternoon in 1987, in Boston. A persistent rain has started to fall, cold and unforgiving. Two men stand knocking on a door with a frosted window that reads MIT Endowment. They have a 3 p.m. appointment to pitch their brand new investment firm, Blackstone, and raise money for a fund so ambitious, so ridiculously large, that everyone on Wall Street has called it impossible. One of the men is Pete Peterson, the former CEO of a famous investment bank and a United States Commerce Secretary. The other is a younger, intensely driven man named Stephen Schwarzman. They knock again. And again. No answer. Finally, a passing janitor sees them. "Oh," he says, "it's Friday. They left a while ago." As the two men walk away, heads down, the rain turns into a torrential downpour. They have no umbrellas, no raincoats. Pete, a man used to drivers and waiting cars, looks miserable, his hair plastered to his head. Stephen, desperate, runs into the street, his suit soaked through, trying to hail a taxi. He's holding up a $20 bill, trying to bribe a passenger in a passing cab just to let them share the ride. He gets refused. Twice. Soaked, defeated, and without a single dollar to show for their efforts, they finally manage to find a ride. This is not the glamorous image of a Wall Street titan. This is a picture of failure, of humiliation. It's the moment of despair every entrepreneur knows all too well, the giant, gaping chasm between the grand vision in your head and the cold, wet reality slapping you in the face. The man getting drenched in that rain, Stephen A. Schwarzman, would go on to build Blackstone into the world's largest alternative investment firm, managing over $500 billion and employing 500,000 people across its portfolio companies. His book, What It Takes, isn't a simple memoir. It's a blueprint. It's a collection of lessons learned at critical turning points, those moments of failure and desperation that ultimately forged the principles of his success. Today, we are going to walk through that blueprint. And I promise you, by the end of our time together, you will understand a profound secret, that the people who achieve extraordinary things are not born with a special gift. They are made. And they are made in moments just like that one, standing soaked and rejected in the pouring rain. Book summary. So, how does a person go from being ignored by an endowment office to advising presidents and building a global financial empire? For Stephen Schwarzman, the journey began long before Blackstone, in a family linen store in Philadelphia. From the age of 10, he worked for his father, folding handkerchiefs and selling towels. But even then, he saw a bigger world. America was booming, suburbs were expanding, and families were growing. He saw the potential for his family's single store to become a national chain, a Bed Bath & Beyond before its time. He pitched the idea to his dad. "We could be huge," he pleaded. His father's response was a lesson that would shape his entire life. "Steve," he said, "I'm a very happy man. We have a nice house. We have 2 cars. What more do I need?" His father was content. He had no ambition to move beyond his comfort zone. This moment taught Schwarzman a fundamental truth: you cannot learn to be an entrepreneur. It's a fire, a restlessness that comes from within. It's the difference between seeing a small, comfortable business and seeing a global empire. And it led him to his very first rule of success, a mantra he would live by: it's just as easy to do something big as it is to do something small. Both will consume your time and your energy, so you might as well pursue a fantasy worthy of your effort, with rewards that match. This drive to go big became his signature. In high school, as student council president, he didn't want to just organize another school dance. He wanted to do something no one had ever thought of. He got the idea to bring the chart-topping Rand B group, Little Anthony and the Imperials, to perform in the school gym. The group was famous, they lived in Brooklyn, and the school had no money. Impossible, right? But through a flurry of phone calls and sheer determination, he made it happen. The band came, the school went wild, and he learned another lesson. If you want something badly enough, you can create it out of nothing. But ambition isn't enough. You also need resilience. You need a high tolerance for pain. He learned this on the high school track, under the guidance of his coach, Jack Armstrong. Coach Armstrong was a quiet genius who never shouted, but his workouts were so grueling that Schwarzman would throw up after practice every single day. They trained in the harshest conditions, running laps in a windy, icy parking lot all winter while their rivals rested. When spring came, they were unbeatable. Coach Armstrong taught him the power of preparation, of making those deposits of hard work when no one is watching, so you have something to withdraw when the pressure is on. This idea of enduring pain for a future reward became the bedrock of his character. He once ran a race where his hamstring ripped on the first curve. The pain was excruciating. He could have stopped. The sensible choice would have been to stop. But he gritted his teeth and finished his leg of the relay, limping and choking down the pain, just to give his team a chance. This relentless drive got him to Yale, but not without a lesson in humility. He was fixated on Harvard, but they put him on the wait list. Convinced it was a mistake, he found the dean of admissions' phone number, gathered a pile of quarters, and called him from a payphone. "I'm going to be very successful," he told the dean, "and you'll be very happy that you accepted me." The dean politely told him the freshman class was full and that he would enjoy Yale. It was a crushing rejection, but it taught him that sometimes, even your best sales pitch isn't enough. You have to accept the outcome and move on. Yale was a shock. He arrived feeling lonely and unprepared. His first English papers came back with grades of 68 and 66. He was failing. But then, a young instructor named Alistair Wood saw something in him. "I have to teach you how to write," Wood told him, "and after that, I'll teach you how to think." This act of mentorship was transformative. Schwarzman realized that teaching isn't just about sharing knowledge, it's about removing the obstacles in people's way. This became a core principle he would later apply in his own business, hiring great people and then clearing the path for them to succeed. Feeling a need for adventure after his freshman year, he took a summer job as an engine room wiper on a Norwegian tanker, destination unknown. He spent weeks in the sweltering heat, cleaning grease and reading the works of Sigmund Freud. It was a world away from the manicured lawns of Yale, but it taught him self-reliance and how to survive in unfamiliar, often hostile, environments. When he returned to Yale, he approached it on his own terms. He noticed the most glaring problem on the all-male campus, a severe lack of women. Applying his old problem-solving instincts, he created the Davenport Ballet Society and organized a festival, inviting dance troupes from all-women colleges to perform. The events were a massive hit. He even managed to get the New York City Ballet to perform at Yale and later arranged for hundreds of students to attend a dress rehearsal of the Nutcracker for free. He had identified a need, created a solution, and in the process, made a name for himself as someone who could make the impossible happen. He followed this by tackling the university's 268-year-old rule that forbade women from staying overnight in dorms. Instead of arguing with administrators, he created a campus-wide survey, got a nearly 100% response rate showing overwhelming opposition to the rule, and gave the results to the student newspaper. 3 days later, the rules were gone. It was his first lesson in the power of the media and of using data to overwhelm opposition. After Yale and a brief, confusing stint on Wall Street at a firm called DLJ, he found himself in the Army Reserves at Fort Polk, Louisiana, during the Vietnam War. His drill sergeant was a decorated war hero who had nothing but contempt for the war's futility. You spend your time trying to take a hill, the sergeant told them. You take it. And 5 days later, you abandon it and the bad guys go right back up the hill. This experience gave Schwarzman a profound appreciation for the human consequences of decisions made by people in power. It also reinforced his suspicion of hierarchy. When he discovered that officers were stealing food from the trainees, leaving them hungry, he bypassed the entire chain of command and went straight to the base's colonel. He faced down clerks, lieutenants, and captains who tried to stop him. The colonel listened, investigated, and a few days later, all the corrupt officers were gone. It was a powerful lesson. If you see something wrong, you have to have the confidence to go against the system to fix it. After the Army, he ended up at Harvard Business School, which he initially hated. He found the case studies abstract and impractical. He was ready to drop out until he received a 6-page, handwritten letter from Dick Jenneret, the president of his old firm, DLJ. Jenneret told him he had felt the exact same way, but staying at Harvard was the best decision of his life. Schwarzman took his advice, stayed, and began to master the fundamentals of business. The single most important lesson he learned was that every business is a closed, integrated system. Every part, from design and manufacturing to marketing and sales, has to work together. If one part breaks, the whole system is at risk. This insight would become the foundation for how he would later structure Blackstone. Armed with this new understanding, he returned to Wall Street, this time joining Lehman Brothers. This was his real education. It was a brutal sink-or-swim environment where you learned by doing, and more often, by making mistakes. On his first big assignment, he made a calculation error that ruined an entire presentation book just before a major meeting. His boss, Eric Gleacher, was furious. "If you ever do that to me again," Gleacher told him, "I'm firing you on the spot." Painful as it was, these mistakes taught him the importance of rigor and the indignity of failure. There are no shortcuts. Mastery requires repetitive practice and suffering through your early errors. At Lehman, he met Pete Peterson, the firm's chairman, who had been brought in to save it from collapse. They formed a powerful partnership. Pete was the statesman, the relationship builder who knew everyone in corporate America and Washington. Schwarzman was the deal maker, the executor. They complemented each other perfectly. But Lehman was a feudal castle, full of infighting and competing factions. In 1983, Pete was pushed out in a power struggle with the head of the trading division, Lou Glucksman. Schwarzman was appalled. "Why didn't you fight?" he asked Pete. Pete, tired of the endless battles, chose to walk away. It was a defining moment. Schwarzman learned that when you are challenged, sometimes you have to be ready to fight, to rip the place apart and then put it back together. Within months of Pete's departure, Glucksman's reckless trading brought Lehman to the brink of bankruptcy. Secretly, Schwarzman orchestrated the sale of the firm to American Express to save it from collapsing entirely. It was an agonizing end to his time there, but it also set him free. In 1985, he and Pete Peterson decided to start their own firm. They met every morning for breakfast and mapped out their vision. They wouldn't just be another small advisory shop. They would build a new kind of financial institution, designed to last for generations. Their plan had 3 legs: a traditional mergers and acquisitions advisory business, a private equity business doing leveraged buyouts (LBOs), and a third, open-ended business line to launch new ventures with exceptional people they called tens. A 10, Schwarzman explains, is someone who doesn't just do what they're told. They sense problems, design solutions, and take the business in new directions without being asked. They always make it rain. The idea was to build a firm that would attract these tens, and in doing so, create an information machine. Each business would feed intelligence to the others, allowing them to see patterns and opportunities that their siloed competitors would miss. They put up $200,000 each, rented a small office, and named their firm by combining the translations of their own names. Schwarz is German for black, and Petros is Greek for stone or rock. Thus, Blackstone was born. They sent out over 400 letters announcing their new firm and waited for the phone to ring. It didn't. Weeks turned into months. The money was draining away, and the failure they had seen on Wall Street felt imminent. This was the moment of truth, the lonely, gut-wrenching reality of starting something new. Their breakthrough came from solving a hard problem. A railroad company, CSX, was trying to buy another company, Sealand, but a corporate raider named Harold Simmons had bought up a huge stake and was holding the deal hostage, demanding to be overpaid. The problem was so difficult that the big banks didn't want to touch it. This, Schwarzman realized, was where the real opportunity lay. The harder the problem, the more limited the competition. He devised a creative and aggressive legal maneuver that essentially trapped Simmons, forcing him to either sell his shares at the fair price or be stuck with an untradeable, worthless asset. Simmons was furious, but he sold. The deal earned Blackstone its first major fee and a reputation for solving problems others couldn't. With that success, they set out to raise their first billion-dollar private equity fund. The rejections were brutal and humbling. They were stood up, laughed at, and told no by almost everyone they knew. After 6 months, they had raised almost nothing. It was during this period of despair that they had that fateful, rainy trip to MIT. But they kept going. As Schwarzman says, you have to be able to sell your vision with conviction, over and over again. Eventually, they got a yes from Prudential Insurance for $100 million, and that broke the dam. They flew to Japan, where a chance encounter and a moment of honest communication with Nikko Securities led to another $100 million commitment and opened the floodgates to Japanese investors. They closed the fund with $850 million just 4 days before the Black Monday stock market crash of 1987. Their urgency had saved them. Then came their biggest test. The firm made a disastrous investment in a steel company called Edgecombe. The partner who brought the deal was passionate, but another partner, David Stockman, vehemently argued it was a terrible investment, predicting it would go bankrupt. Schwarzman sided with the passionate pitchman. Within months, steel prices collapsed, and Edgecombe was imploding, just as Stockman had warned. Schwarzman was summoned to the office of an investor who screamed at him, calling him an incompetent imbecile. He sat there, fighting back tears, knowing the man was right. "This is never, ever going to happen to me again," he vowed. This failure became the single most important teacher in Blackstone's history. It forced them to create a new, rigorous, and depersonalized investment process. From then on, every potential investment would be debated by all senior partners. Deal proposals had to be circulated 2 days in advance. The meetings were designed for constructive confrontation, where everyone was required to find problems and critique the deal's weaknesses. The goal was to obsess about the downside until they were certain they couldn't lose money. This system, born from failure, became the backbone of Blackstone's success. Schwarzman's #1 rule for investing became a mantra: don't lose money. This culture of intellectual rigor allowed them to see around corners. In 2006, at one of their Monday morning meetings, a new employee calling in from India mentioned that raw land prices there had gone up 10 times in 18 months. Schwarzman almost choked on his coffee. A few moments later, the team in Europe mentioned a similar housing bubble in Spain. Connecting these two seemingly random data points from opposite sides of the world, he sensed a global credit bubble. He immediately ordered the firm to pull back from all housing-related investments, anywhere in the world. While their competitors were still bidding aggressively, Blackstone effectively closed shop, selling assets and avoiding risky deals. They were preparing for the storm they knew was coming. This caution, however, didn't stop them from seizing a once-in-a-generation opportunity. In late 2006, legendary real estate investor Sam Zell decided to sell his entire office property empire, EOP. It was the largest collection of office buildings in the world. Schwarzman's real estate chief, John Gray, knew this was a can't-miss opportunity, but only if they could execute it with incredible speed before the market crashed. The deal was enormous, valued at $39 billion, the largest real estate transaction in history. But Schwarzman laid down a seemingly impossible condition: "I want to sell half of it immediately. On the day we close. I don't want any daylight." It was an unprecedented move, born of his paranoia about the coming crash. In a stunning display of coordinated execution, on the very day Blackstone closed the purchase of EOP, John Gray's team simultaneously closed the sale of nearly $30 billion worth of those same properties to other buyers who didn't see the crisis coming. They had bought and sold a real estate empire in a single day, locking in profits and dramatically reducing their risk just before the market collapsed. When the 2008 financial crisis hit, Blackstone was prepared. They had cash from their recent IPO, long-term committed funds, and a portfolio largely clear of the cyclical businesses that were getting hammered. While the rest of the world was panicking, Blackstone was open for business. They bought Hilton Hotels in 2007, another massive deal that looked disastrous as the travel market collapsed. Critics called it a catastrophic failure. But Blackstone held on, restructured the debt, invested in the business, and when the market recovered, their investment in Hilton became the single most profitable private equity deal in history, earning their investors over $14 billion. The crisis provided another huge opportunity. After the housing market collapsed, millions of single-family homes were in foreclosure. No large institution had ever been in the business of buying and renting out individual houses. It was a fragmented, mom-and-pop industry. But Blackstone saw the dislocation. They began buying foreclosed homes on courthouse steps, one by one, eventually purchasing over 50,000 homes across the country. They renovated them, hired tens of thousands of local workers in the process, and created a new professional rental company called Invitation Homes. They had created an entirely new asset class out of the wreckage of the financial crisis. Schwarzman's journey from that rainy day at MIT taught him that the greatest opportunities are often found in the middle of a crisis, when everyone else is running for the exits. Whether it was the sandal crisis of the early 90s that opened up real estate, the collapse of Enron that created opportunities in energy, or the 2008 meltdown that allowed them to buy iconic assets at historic lows, the lesson was always the same: turn crisis into opportunity. Commentary. As you listen to these stories of near-fatal mistakes, impossible deals, and world-changing bets, it's easy to get caught up in the sheer scale of it all. The billions of dollars, the meetings with presidents, the global empire. But if you look closer, the most powerful lessons in what it takes are surprisingly simple and deeply human. The book is not really about finance. It's about a way of seeing the world. It's about cultivating an intolerance for mediocrity and a relentless desire to learn and improve. One of the most profound ideas, repeated throughout his life, is that the best executives are made, not born. They absorb information. They study their own experiences, they learn from their mistakes, and they evolve. They are not afraid to admit when they are wrong, because they know that failure, if analyzed correctly, is the best teacher an organization can have. Think about the Edgecombe disaster. For many, a failure that humiliating would be something to bury. But for Schwarzman, it became the catalyst for creating the disciplined, almost scientific, investment process that defines Blackstone today. He turned a moment of personal shame into an institutional strength. That is the essence of what it takes. It's not about avoiding failure, it's about architecting a system that makes you stronger because of it. Another powerful and perhaps counterintuitive lesson is the idea that worrying is an active and liberating activity. We are often taught to avoid worry, to think positively. But Schwarzman reframes it. For him, worrying is the process of articulating the downside of any situation. It's what drives you to find every potential risk, every possible way something can go wrong, and then to build a plan to protect yourself. It was this active worrying that allowed him to see the 2008 crisis coming when almost no one else did. So what can you, at 17, take away from all this? First, start practicing the habit of going big in your own life. When you set a goal, ask yourself, what would this look like if it were 10 times bigger? Not because you have to achieve it, but because the exercise will force you to think more creatively and ambitiously than you otherwise would. It's as easy to dream of building a lemonade stand as it is to dream of building a global beverage company. The initial effort is the same. Second, start treating information as your most valuable asset. The book shows that the people who succeed are the ones who are constantly taking in new inputs, from books, from people, from seemingly unrelated industries. They connect dots others don't see. Start today. Read something completely outside your interests. Talk to someone with a totally different perspective. Be a collector of perspectives. And finally, embrace your failures. The next time you make a mistake, and you will, don't just feel bad about it. Analyze it. Write down exactly what went wrong and why. Then, create one simple rule or system for yourself to make sure it never happens again. Turn your failures into your personal algorithm for success. That was a summary of What It Takes, by Stephen A. Schwarzman. We've covered some incredible ground today, but I have to be honest with you. A summary like this is just the map, it's not the journey. The real lessons, the ones that will truly stick with you, are found in the details of the stories, in the quiet moments of reflection when you read the book for yourself. This summary is meant to be a guide, to help you decide if this is a journey worth taking. If any of the ideas we discussed today, about ambition, resilience, and turning fantasy into reality, sparked something in you, then I encourage you to pick up a copy. The link is in the description. Reading it is more than just learning. It's an apprenticeship with one of the master builders of our time. Also, if you found this summary valuable, please do me a small favor and hit that subscribe button. It tells us that these journeys are worth taking together, and it ensures you won't miss our next exploration into another book that has the power to change the way you think. Let's keep learning, and let's keep growing, together.